Hi, this is Colin from the History Pilgrim. I hope you've been enjoying my videos and I'd be interested to hear your comments. Be sure to subscribe and share with a friend. The Concord remains one of the greatest achievements in the history of aviation. Developed jointly by the British and French governments in the 1960s, the Concord was a supersonic passenger airliner, capable of flying at speeds far greater than any passenger aircraft before or since. Its sleek delta-wing design and needle-like nose symbolized technological innovation. The Concord's performance redefined the concept of transatlantic air travel. At its top cruising speed, the aircraft could travel nearly twice the speed of sound. This made an average flight between New York City and London just 3.5 hours compared to the typical 7 hours. The fastest ever Concorde flight between New York City and London took 2 hours and 52 minutes. From the moment the first Concorde flights began in 1976, the plane marked a turning point in the history of aviation. The performance of the Concorde during takeoff and acceleration to supersonic speeds set it apart from every other commercial aircraft in history. Each of the Concorde's engines produced 38,000 pounds of thrust. The plane needed to reach incredible speeds compared to other aircraft just to get airborne. After takeoff, the plane regularly broke the sound barrier within 20 minutes of takeoff. To reach the speed, Concord would enter a shallow climb known as the Supersonic Cruise Climb, gradually gaining altitude while building speed. Because the Concorde could make the journey from New York City to London or Paris in 3 hours, this gave business travelers a massive time advantage. The Concorde's speed wasn't the only astonishing thing. The Concorde also flew at much higher altitudes than any other commercial aircraft. The Concorde flew so high that at 60,000 feet the sky appeared a dark blue color during the day, which almost felt like early evening. Because the plane flew faster than the Earth rotated, passengers flying westbound, such as from London to New York City, could arrive earlier than their departure time. For example, a flight could leave London at 10:30 a.m. and arrive in New York City at 9 a.m. A flight on the Concorde was a luxurious experience far different than any other commercial airline experience in history. It began long before takeoff. Because the Concorde catered to business executives, celebrities, and royalty, passengers were often whisked through special check-in areas with little delay. The passengers had access to VIP lounges and luxury services. The interior of Concorde planes were far more luxurious than the cabins of other airliners. The cabins were narrow, sleek, and only seated about 100 passengers. The passengers were served fine champagne and amazing food such as filet mignon, caviar, and lobster, and were given a tour of the cockpit. The Concorde only served a limited number of routes and only operated aircraft for 2 airlines, Air France and British Airways. The Concorde primarily operated out of JFK Airport in New York City on flights to London and Paris, but occasionally took special charter flights to Washington, D.C. and Barbados. Flying on the Concorde was not cheap. In 1996, the average ticket price from New York City to London was around $12,000. Because of this, only ultra-wealthy business travelers or celebrities could afford to fly on it. It may seem ridiculous that anyone would pay nearly 4 times as much money just so they could travel to Europe in half the time as a regular airliner. The reason people paid this much more was because time is money. If someone needed to be in London or Paris from New York City for a meeting as soon as possible, then it made logistical sense. While the aircraft were developed jointly by the British and French governments, the US, despite its vast resources and leadership in aviation, never produced any Concorde planes of their own. One of the most likely proposals for an American Concorde was a route on a US-based carrier between New York City and Los Angeles. This proposed route on Pan American Airlines was one of the most talked about possible routes. This route seemed extremely attractive for business travelers who wished to cross the continent in 2.5 hours opposed to 6. The demand was there and it probably would have happened if not for one major issue. The Concorde planes, upon breaking the sound barrier, generated enormous sonic booms. Congress banned Concorde planes from flying over populated areas. These booms were a natural result of their design. The sonic booms, which would continue for the entire flight, would exist in waves. This became such a concern that it was an inconvenience for many other airlines, which often had to alert passengers when a Concorde was flying nearby so they wouldn't panic. If the noise pollution was a burden for other aircraft crossing the Atlantic Ocean, it would have been a logistical nightmare for Concorde jets crossing over populated areas in the US. The Concorde's glowing reputation came to a crashing halt on July 25, 2000, when an Air France flight bound to New York City from Paris crashed shortly after takeoff, killing all 113 passengers. While this crash was the final blow for the Concorde, it had already been in economic decline for years. The crash occurred from a metal strip which had fallen from another aircraft on the runway. This ended up causing a tire to burst, and the debris punctured one of the jet's fuel tanks, causing an explosion. While this disaster was the final nail in the coffin for the Concorde, it wasn't the only factor which led to its retirement. The truth is the Concorde was never an economic success. Operating costs were astronomically high. The very limited fleet of planes, combined with extremely high maintenance costs and the limited number of high-paying passengers, meant that it could never hope to be a financial success. With an aging fleet and a loss in revenue for both Air France and British Airways, the final Concorde flight ever flew from New York City to London in October 2003. Thankfully, many Concorde aircraft have been kept and displayed in museums around the world. Some of these locations are the Brooklands Museum in Surrey, England, the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington, and the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum hangar at Dulles International Airport in Virginia. Despite the retirement of the Concorde, the idea of supersonic passenger jets returning is not out of the realm of possibility. Several aerospace startups, most notably Boom Supersonic, are actively working on developing supersonic passenger jets. Rather than serving over 100 extremely wealthy passengers, a future supersonic aircraft may target fewer passengers but run with higher frequency. This could result in fewer seats needing to be sold at premium prices. If the sonic boom issue was resolved, then we could see supersonic aircraft used again for air travel in the US within the next decade. United Airlines has already signed an agreement to purchase Boom Overtune jets, suggesting an early interest. If they make a return, supersonic jets could reshape how businesses operate and even where people can live and work. The rise of supersonic jets could shift travel patterns and elevate secondary airports. For example, an airline might develop a dedicated supersonic terminal in a city like Denver or Charlotte, offering connections to both US coasts in record time. In conclusion, the Concorde remains more than 2 decades after its retirement, one of the most ambitious feats in the history of aviation. It was the Concorde's unparalleled speed and elegance, which captured imaginations globally. Today, renewed interest in supersonic passenger flight is not without its issues. While there are challenges regarding noise pollution cost and environmental concerns, there are clear rewards in potentially revisiting supersonic commercial flight for the next generation. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to stay tuned for more history videos. Sincerely, the History Pilgrim.